Wednesday, Wednesday, Wednesday. Can you believe it? It is Wednesday. Absolutely unbelievable. Can't believe the week has gone by this quick. Fellas, how many of you have not showered outside of the water slide? Anyone? Anyone treat the water slide as their shower? No? Okay. I guarantee you at this point in the week, there's at least one adult leader who has eaten something or done something that they promised themselves they would never do in their lives. Okay? Adult leaders, I know. But today, we got to keep going. Got to keep focused. Got to stay attentive. Today, I think God wants to do something amazing in your heart and your soul. I know that through David's messages and through everything that you're experiencing at camp, that God is changing your heart. I'm confident of that. And today is no different. Today, God wants to do something miraculous in your heart today. And today, our theme for the day is Keep the Faith. When I was a kid, I loved baseball. Baseball was my go-to sport. I loved it. I breathed it. I watched it on TV. I was obsessed with it. But more than anything, I was obsessed with Little League. That was my place, all right? I was a ballpark kid. And so I was one of those kids, if you've ever been to a ball field, and you see those little kids that almost look homeless because they're so filthy dirty from the dirt, and they're running around with huge chews of bubble gum in their mouths, and they're just bothering everyone and pestering. I was one of those kids, okay? Because I just loved the ball field. I just loved it. I loved watching games. I loved being at the concession stand. I loved drinking Slurpees, eating nachos. I loved everything about baseball. I just loved it. And if you remember in Little League, if you ever played in Little League, or maybe you're just coming out of playing in some older baseball leagues, you remember that with rec leagues, you normally only had one practice a week and maybe 2 games a week. It wasn't a huge commitment. But for me, I loved it even outside of that. I loved practice. I loved the games. My dad was my coach, and so we got to play and practice all the time. I'd come home from school, and my dad would ask me what I want to do that night, and I would just want to play baseball. You know, I just loved it. But the cool thing about it is that if I was ever tired of baseball, or I was ever kind of bored with it, I could just go run around and do something else at the ball field, right? I could go and hang out with my friends in the sand pit and play pickle. If you ever played pickle, that's a big game we used to play at the ball field. Or I could go get some cool candy at the concession stand and go throw sunflower seeds at people. Just stupid stuff. I could do whatever I want. But for me, whenever I got too old for Little League, right, there comes a point where the rec league stops providing a place for you to play, and you only have one option. And that option is play on the high school baseball team. Okay? So I thought, well, I love baseball, might as well do this. But something changed. All right? Because in Little League, I wasn't required to do anything. You know, I mean, in practice, we just threw back and forth and took batting practice. But in high school practice, we had to run sprints. We had to run around the field a million times. We had to do all this conditioning, all this hard work. And practice was not fun. Okay? And the games were every other day. Practice on the off days. You never had any free time. And it took a lot out of me. It took a huge commitment. And so I quit. I was done with baseball. I wanted nothing to do with it if it was going to require that much of me. If baseball was going to take up all of my free time and it wasn't fun anymore, I was out. My love for baseball ended once things got difficult. And the reason I tell you that story is I believe the same is true of your relationship with Jesus. I believe that many of you are here today and you're at this camp because going to church and following Jesus for you right now has been fun. It has been. You're surrounded with great friends. You've got a cool program to go to back home at your home church. You've got awesome camps like this to go to, and it's fun. But I tell you that because you really need to examine whether or not you're following Jesus because He's fun, because this is fun right now, or because you truly believe in Him, because you truly have faith in Him. And here's why I tell you that, because there will come a time in your life, I guarantee you, when following Jesus is no longer fun. When following Jesus is not the cool thing to do. There's a stat that bothers me, and it bothers youth ministers all across the world, and I'm sure you've probably heard this stat. But the stat is this. Over 75% of Christians in high school abandon their faith completely the minute they step foot on a college campus. Okay, let me say that again. 75%, over 75% even, most studies show, of students who call themselves Christians, which is most of you all, right? Says that over 75% of you all, once you step foot on a college campus, you are done with Jesus. Now, the reasons for that could be many, but I think one of the biggest reasons is that when you hit college, your faith no longer becomes easy. It no longer becomes fun. It no longer becomes the enjoyable thing to do. You no longer have this cool youth group you've been surrounded by. You no longer have mom and dad reminding you of the importance of church, right? You're out of it. You're out of your elements, right? It's not fun. It's not enjoyable. And so because of that, you abandon it. Just like I quit baseball when it started demanding something of me, you'll quit Jesus when He starts demanding something of you and when it gets tough. You know the old phrase, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, right? The question is, when life gets tough, and it will, what are you going to do? Are you going to keep the faith? When following Jesus requires that you put forth all the efforts, and that you're the one who, on your own, not your parents' faith, not your youth group's faith, not your friends' faith, but when it's all about you and your faith, and it's tough, where will you go? Will you keep the faith, or will you quit? It's funny because when you read the Bible, and you read about how Jesus described what it would be like to follow Him, He never uses the word fun. He never uses the word easy. In fact, He says the opposite. He says it's going to be incredibly difficult. And you have to pick up your cross and follow Jesus, and you have to sacrifice. You have to die to yourself and live for Him. It's all these drastically difficult things to do. And that's how Jesus says it's like to follow Him. And so what I want you to do today, as you go out and you spend some time with Jesus this morning, I want you to really think about your faith. I want you to think about what you're going to do when it gets tough. Are you going to keep the faith, or are you going to quit it? I've got two verses I want you to read today. The first one is Matthew chapter 16, verse 24. You're going to read that verse, Matthew chapter 16, verse 24. There's going to be some questions along with it. I also want you to read 1 Peter 1, verses 5 through 9. There'll be some questions with that as well. So that's going to be a bulk of your time with Jesus today. But also the last part of that is something, a specific activity that I want you to do. I want you to spend some time writing out some statements to God. Okay? Some statements that are very specific about what you won't do. Okay? So for instance, God, I promise when blank happens, I won't walk away. I will keep the faith. Okay? God, I promise when blank goes wrong, I will keep the faith. God, I promise when I am tempted by blank, I will keep the faith. You see what I'm saying? I want you to write out some possible scenarios that God, when this happens, when this possible thing goes wrong in my life, I promise you I will keep the faith. And this is you drawing the line in the sand a little bit. That's what I want you to do this morning when you're spending time with Jesus in your devotional time. I want you to draw the line in the sand, saying, Jesus, when this happens, when Satan throws this my way, when it's no longer easy, whenever this situation happens, just dream up some circumstances. When this happens, I promise you, Jesus, I will keep the faith. I want you to pray over those. All right? I want you to go out, spend time with Jesus this morning, connect with Him, and make some firm commitments that today you will, for the rest of your life, keep the faith.